The theist finding that their belief is based on a figure that there is no affirmative ontology for has attempted to make the assertion that Scripture holds some sort of scientific merit, in that well-known scientific fact was supposedly known to the authors of said Scripture long before scientific discovery. Now, more often than not, the person making this claim is scientifically and historically illiterate, has a fundamental misunderstanding of the scientific method, and will believe the word of a theologian with a doctorate in education before listening to someone who actually has some authority on the subject. Now, on a side note, probably the fastest way to detect a scientific illiterate is if you hear the words, "it's only a theory." This denotes that they are assuming the layman interpretation of the word theory as opposed to the actual definition of a scientific theory. The meanings of the word, or the words, is taught in most science classes as the first order of business, which shows that either they didn't attend or they didn't listen to the instructor in Science 101. Now let's go back to the subject here. Several attempts to link scientific discoveries to their Scripture, as supposedly having some merit, have risen in the past century or so. Apologists have searched fervently for any passage that can be loosely interpreted as describing that which has been scientifically proven. A website that claims to have found 101 scientific facts and foreknowledge in the Bible touts this claim proudly, and oblivious to just how absurd their claims sound to anyone with a degree of intellect above room temperature, just a little knowledge of history, and has access to research materials to find out a few things. After examining these claims, any intelligent reader would immediately see that many of the claims are just trying to contradict scientifically verified known facts with scriptural explanations. The rest of the claims were likely already known by common people of the time, or scientific discovery was already made by the time of the writing of the Scriptures in the first place. So, the Quran is another scripture that followers of their faith attempt to claim scientific miracles using the exact same method. Some fundamentalist Muslims claim that these cannot be debunked because people that do not understand the language. Well, there's a link to the right that I will place that debunks the scientific claims of the Quran from someone who actually speaks Arabic. Different prophet, different religions, different books, same story. The scientific validity of the scripture has been debunked. One point that I would like to make regarding this claim is that if it were in fact true, then every single division of science, every laboratory, every archaeology expedition's vehicle, and in every science class, Scripture would be required reading, and the scientific community would have teams of theologians on staff to diligently decipher Scripture to discover even more. The reason that Scripture is not used in science is mainly for two reasons. One, it makes claims of absolute truth, and two, many of the claims are actually wrong. For instance, the Bible has been interpreted and reinterpreted and reinterpreted, and they have determined the age of the earth. Theists claim that the earth is only a little over 6,000 years old, by tracing successive generations as listed in the Bible back from a time where historical events can be verified by archaeological finds in Egypt, generally from the time of Pharaoh Ramses the Great in Egypt. This guy's from the 25th dynasty in Egypt around 1279 BC. Archaeological finds have also discovered that there is evidence of human activity in two small beads strung together dating as far back as 45,000 years ago. Now, this is the earliest seen attachment of symbolic meaning in art, a uniquely human quality. An equally confirming find of cave paintings dated as far back as 35,000 years ago also extends beyond the biblical creationist account of the history of the world. Evidence of human activity is dated as far back as 120 to 160,000 years ago, with stone tools and other artifacts that could only be made by human ingenuity, human manual dexterity, and human intent. This was determined by using geological strata, and finally it was confirmed by several different forms of radiological isotope dating. This all dates further back in time than any scriptural account of Adam and Eve. Mankind has been around for much longer than any scripture has described. So as far as the earth, a simple method of dating back before the time of the alleged creation, as found in the Bible, is to look at botanical sciences. Simple botanical sciences that a 10-year-old can perform has shown that a bristlecone pine tree in the Shilman Grove area of California actually existed on the earth at least 8,000 years ago. How about the European oaks? 10,000 years. How about pines in Germany? 12.4 thousand years. How about counting layers of sediments in a lake? Like Sigetsu Varves? That dates back to 29,000 years ago? How about visually counting layers of ice in several parts of the world, like the Dundee Ice Core in China and the Qualcaya Ice Core in Peru, both confirming their dates to go back as far as 40,000 years ago. Let's go to Greenland. The ice cores and dust layers there, 60,000 years ago. How about the big one? Antarctica, 900,000 years ago. And finally, we use radiometric dating. Now, we calibrated this using the exact same methods used before with visually counting layers of ice or sediments or tree rings. We have determined the age of the oldest known igneous rock to be 4.5 billion years old. So, using several different methods, we have shown that Scripture is wrong about the age of the earth. So, when this and other claims of absolute truth can easily be dismissed as false, we can readily see why any claims of scientific validity are just as easily ignored.